Three very important things happened today. First one, I processed my unworthy emotion at the very, very deep level that I didn't realize it existed that deep, and then which changed the way I look at the unworthy belief system. Second thing, I recorded my Money and Freedom podcast for the first time today with Danielle, Dr. Danielle. And then the third time, that one, a realization that now my birds, what I call my birds, are the herons that are going home at dusk. They now fly in a huge flock. I used to see maybe like 10, 17 birds flying together, but the last 2 days or 3 days, I've been watching them flying in the numbers beyond what I can count. And I would think there are about 60 or 70 birds all flying together. And that, instead of like flying in twos and fives, and which I was able to count up to 100 or 120 even, now they fly in too many numbers for me to count. So this is all very interesting. I'll tell you why. The first one about, let me just talk about the discovering the unworthiness. So for a few days, I've been feeling kind of like off, not very clear, not feeling very negatively, but I noticed that I was not eager. I didn't have much excitement about the things that that I would do that normally I would, which is giving a talk, a session, a keynote at my Toastmasters Club, the Edupreneurs. And then the other one is what I just did today, recording the Money and Freedom podcast, which I had planned, which had thought about, I was so excited about. Suddenly, this last few days, I just had no energy, no emotional energy, no mental energy towards it. I was not depressed. I was not sick. I was not feeling lazy, particularly. Just not having an excitement or eagerness about this podcast, about these two things, the podcast and the talk. And so I'm a life coach, so I have a lot of tools in my toolkit. And I was thinking of doing, okay, if I could just get myself to do the creative process deliberately, I would be okay. But when I laid down the steps that I would do for me personally, which the first and foremost, the very important step is, first, you have to get happy. You have to get in a happy emotion or positive emotion before you can create. And while I was not feeling extremely negative or depressed, I just seemed, that thought about getting to be happy just was a stressed out thought for me. So I couldn't do it, or I just didn't want to do it. It's like, oh, I don't have the energy to do this. And then, so I want to sleep without doing it, even though I was actually planning to do it for the next 30 days, starting last night. And then, so when I woke up this morning, I just wake up with this kind of like heavy feeling. It was not very clear what that feeling was. It was not sadness. I knew it was a negative, because if I'm not negative, I would be joyful, eager, excited, and all of that. So I know it was negative. but I could not pinpoint, but I could feel it. I could feel the heaviness in my chest. It's kind of like there's a pressure coming from forward towards me, or towards the center of my chest, but it was very happy and very oppressive. So it felt very uncomfortable, to almost to the point of pain, but not quite pain. But it's very oppressive. It's just very, very uncomfortable. So I just decided, okay, I'm just gonna sit with it and just be with this. And then as I was just feeling it, I could feel some emotion, just negative, just not good feeling emotion. And then I guess my training or my practice kicked in, and I just started doing Ho'oponopono, doing like, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you, even though I wasn't even sure what I was saying it to. And then eventually it became clearer. The words kind of like form itself, or maybe I was guided to say it to connect with what I was really feeling. And it was that this feeling of negative feelings, which was what I was doing the Ho'oponopono on, or taking responsibility for. So I'm sorry. Please forgive me for this, whatever's going on in me that is causing me to feel these negative emotions. And I just keep repeating, saying that, and asking my inner child to let go of this, the memories that have caused this feeling. And then eventually it became clearer and clearer. And so it was like, oh, unworthiness. There's a feeling of unworthiness in me. There's a feeling of unworthiness, and suddenly it was just like unworthiness, shame, anger, disappointment. They just became clearer in my mind, even though I was not connecting things to others, and I just kept saying all these Ho'oponopono phrases, and then I started to see memories. I started to recall memories where I had been feeling this deep unworthiness, and the feeling that what's the point of doing anything if it's not deemed worthy, or I'm not considered worthwhile or worthy. So that's where probably that resistance, that lack of enthusiasm or desire was coming from, even though it was not a conscious thought, because when I thought about it, about the idea, I was very excited about it. So I just kept saying that, and then that's when I guess I hit jackpot in the emotional processing, because I started feeling the emotion stronger, and I start crying, just releasing that emotion, and I could feel that heavy pressure, that very strong pressure felt like ice thawing. It became less oppressive, and the emotions started to flow, and I started just to cry, to sob, and and then it became clearer to me that this part of me is asking for my acknowledgement. It was asking for its acknowledgement that it had to believe that it was unworthy. This is a very strange phrasing. Even when it first occurred to me, it sounded a bit different or strange, because this part was asking acknowledgement for almost like having to believe or having to give in to whatever's around it or outside it, that to accept that it is unworthy. So can you get that together? It had to accept the belief that it is unworthy. So it was not a natural feeling that just came like, yeah, I'm unworthy. But it's almost like it came from outside, or from maybe repeated confirmation from outside, that finally it had to accept that it had to believe that it is unworthy. So that part won acknowledgement from me, which is sounds strange, but yeah. So on that point, I realized this is not a voluntary thing. So something, there must have been like an outside pressure or something that eventually it felt it had to concede and accept that it is unworthy. And then another part of me was just showing itself up, the part that had compensated, that had tried to prove itself worthy. And this is the part that had to excel, had to be great, had to be better than, had to be the best, had to be acknowledged, recognized, praised, all of those things, that maybe showed up as how I showed up, how I wanted to be seen, how I wanted to be heard, all of that. And then even this part is also asking for acknowledgement that, well, on one hand, it was doing that to try to push against that feeling of unworthiness. It's like it didn't want to accept that it was unworthy, and so it wanted to keep proving itself that it is worthy. And then I also realized the truth that I had subscribed to, which is that God created us as worthy creatures, as worthy beings, and God never saw us as being unworthy. So this part that was pushing against was actually just wanted to state the truth, to show the truth. The truth is there is not unworthiness. There is no unworthiness. And the truth is I was already worthy, and it wanted to prove that truth. That was the pushing against. That was the trying to prove itself, trying to show that itself is worthy, finding ways to get to that feeling of worthiness again. But it did it, with the such strategy that was just not successful. And every time it tried to show itself to be worthy or to push against the feeling of unworthiness, what it encountered is more evidence of unworthiness. And so it became, angrier, sadder, bitter, all of that. And it also wanted to be acknowledged that it is not the bad person, and maybe I had seen that part, or maybe others had seen that part, that want to show off or want to look good, want to be good, as so-called bad. And that part is pushing against that. I'm not bad, I'm just trying to prove the truth here. So it was a very interesting process, and I get to see the depth of this and the complexity of this belief of unworthiness. And for the very first time, I felt that I truly connected with that belief at a very, very deep level, at where it all started. And it's like it wanted to show itself fully, to be seen itself, or parts of it fully, that how I have seen it, or how the world have seen it, or how the world has believed about unworthiness, has not quite touched what and how this belief of unworthiness was created in the first place. So this was a very special moment for me, to just be able to see that and to experience that. And so that was the first part of the morning. And later on, as I was journaling that, it was like a two-part processing, kind of like a few hours later. When I journaled it, it went a lot deeper, and this is when I discovered the whole picture. So it was a very, very momentous morning. and I'm very happy to get that. And once that was released, the heaviness was no longer there, and I found the energy, and like the podcast was happening in a few hours, the recording part was happening in a few hours, and I no longer was resisting it. And so that took me to the first podcast recording, which the first podcast really that I create consciously and also co host with Danielle, who is my past coachee. So she went through my program, Journey to Wholeness, and she had completed. She's a graduate, and I found that we are quite um, alike in our thinking. Kind of like we care a lot about this inner freedom, inner health. So we decided to do this podcast together, and we did the first sessions. And yeah, I think the morning release of the unworthiness also took something off me in a way that I cared less now about who's going to see it, what they're going to do it, what they're going to think about it, and that made me freer to show up in the podcast without overthinking it, and just like willing to be imperfect, and discovering it by myself or for myself, and just showing up as authentically as possible. So that was real progress for me, and I really enjoyed that. Danielle and I both enjoyed that, and I can't wait for you guys to watch the program. It's called Money and Freedom Podcast. It won't be launched until the 8th of August. So stay tuned. I will let you know about that as well. Now, the third thing about the birds. So this podcast, Dusk with Miranda, was started because of my interest in watching the birds, the heron birds, going home at dusk at around this time. And I got into the habit of counting them, and then I was also playfully would set a goal. I would like to see 50 or 100 or 120, and sometimes I hit the goal, sometimes I didn't, and then I start playing. Well, if I hit this many, it means I'm going to hit my money goal. And well, both have not hit together at the same time, but I noticed that my money goal is increasing, and what I mean by that, I'm generating more and more money in a much more playful way, and I play with the birds, so it became a habit now. Every dusk, I would just sit out in my garden. I know it's getting a bit dark now, and then just watch them and count them. And I've been doing that for almost a month, and from that came the idea of doing this Dusk with Miranda. And this new development about seeing the flock like in really huge numbers, I just saw about where earlier there was about 12, and just recently there was about another 5. But I've seen like about 60 or 70, I think about 70 of them flying together just this last 3 days. And today I saw it again, and I thought, I wonder if that is also correlating to the way I'm receiving abundance now. So instead of like drips and drips, or in small amounts, I would receive abundance in the amount that I cannot even count anymore. Wouldn't that be a great idea, a great experience? So I decide that I want to take that experience as that. So when there's so many birds that I could not even count, that would represent how abundance come to me. It comes in the amount that I could not count, and it didn't really matter how many there are, because there's just so many beyond what I'm able to count, or beyond what I'm needing or wanting. So that is a beautiful thought. So that ends my episode today. This is quite fun, and I know it's getting a bit dark. And if I show up wonky to you, that's because I'm doing this under very very minimal light. And but here you are, Dusk with Miranda, and I'm Miranda Rumi, saying hello to you from Ubud. Until the next episode. Bye.